Abraham was a man who believed in God and followed his voice into an unknown land. God promised that Abraham's family would become a great nation, but the promise did not come quick. Abraham and his wife Sarah trusted God, but year after year passed and they had no child. They were growing old, and waiting became painful. Sarah waited many years for a child, but it never happened. She believed she could never have a baby, so she decided that Abraham should have a child with another woman in their home. That woman was Hagar, a young servant who worked for Sarah. She had no choice in the decision. Her life was about to change. When Hagar became pregnant, everything shifted. One heart felt lifted, another felt pushed aside. What was meant to solve the problem created pain instead. Peace left the home. Broken and afraid, Hagar ran into the wilderness. She was alone, pregnant, and unsure of her future. Even in the wilderness, God saw her. The servant who felt forgotten was not forgotten by God. God promised that her child would live and grow. He showed her that her life still mattered. Hagar returned, and a son was born. Abraham named him Ishmael. "13 years passed. Once again, God seemed silent. When Abraham was 99 years old, God spoke again. The waiting was not over, but the promise was still alive. God changed Abram's name to Abraham. The new name meant Father of Many Nations. It was a reminder that God's promise was still alive. God also changed Sarai's name to Sarah. He promised that she herself would have a son. Even in her old age, the promise was not finished. Abraham laughed when he heard the promise, not because he doubted God, but because the promise seemed impossible. God did not forget Ishmael. He promised to bless him and protect his future. God returned once more to Abraham's home. He promised that within 1 year, Sarah would have a son. Sarah laughed when she heard the promise. Years of waiting made it hard for her to believe. God reminded them that nothing is too hard for him. What seems impossible to people is possible with God. Months passed quietly. Sarah's laughter slowly turned into faith. At the exact time God promised, Sarah gave birth to a son. The waiting finally came to an end. They named the child Isaac, which means laughter. God had turned their waiting into joy. God saw Hagar. God remembered Ishmael. God kept his promise to Abraham and Sarah. This story is about waiting and trusting God. It shows that God always keeps his word. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and walk with us as we bring the Bible to life, one story at a time.